Hello, this is IP Stories by 4IP Counsel, the podcast about innovation and intellectual property. Join us and you will hear about the journeys through invention, creation, and IP understanding of our guests.
I'm Marta.
And I'm Axel. And we have with us today Christie Thoene. She's the former Vice President of Policy and Legal Communications at Qualcomm, where she spent 20 years at the center of some of the most consequential patent and IP battles globally, including significant proceedings in Europe.
Also, Christie recently retired from Qualcomm and is now launching her own consulting practice called CTG. Christie, welcome to IP Stories.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So we will get into the excitement of this new phase because I do want to know much more about your new consulting practice. But first, I would like to go back to your beginnings. So one thing that I thought about when I was reading about you is how you have worked in this intersection of law, policy, and communications. And I would like to know more about how did you find your way into the world of IP?
So thank you. Thank you for the question. I have a sort of a strange path to this area in that I was a litigator here in San Diego. I'm located in San Diego for about 10 years, and I took a break from that job. I became a partner. I was trying cases. I had really achieved what I had set out to do. I think I realized that job was not right for me long term. And so I took a break, and a few years into that gap, I ran into a friend of mine who was leading corporate communications at Qualcomm at the time. And she was looking for somebody with legal experience to come do public relations and specifically help out with litigation related communications. The company was involved in a lot of global litigation at the time. And it was a time when Qualcomm basically gave her the leeway to go hire whomever she needed to help support that effort. And so we got to talking, and she said, I'll teach you how to do public relations. You explain to me what a sanctions hearing is. And we worked together for many, many years after that. So it was really a combination of just being in the right place at the right time, hearing about the opportunity, and working with somebody who was very innovative and creative and smart and gave me an opportunity. So it's great.
Yes, and also combining your skills perfectly.
Yeah, it is a good combination. I think storytelling and communications is a lot like trial work. It's advocacy. It's trying to get people to see your side of things and hopefully get them, help persuade them to see things the way you see them.
So you actually spent years in the policy and legal communication side, and at one of the most high-profile IP companies in the world. That's really amazing. But the fascinating blend, part legal, part storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
How did you think about your role, and how did it evolve over time?
I think the way we thought about it was, what are all the different levers that we can pull to try and achieve whatever goal we had, whether that was an advocacy goal in the policy arena or a litigation related goal. And at Qualcomm, those things tended to go hand in hand. And so we had pretty visionary leadership who could see all the different opportunities for storytelling and advocacy. And we work together as a team: litigation, legal, our IP department, communications, marketing. I mean, all of the different organizations that had an impact on how the company was perceived and how well we did in terms of advocacy. So we all work together to try and achieve the same objective. And I think having management support all those different options was really great, because it gave us the opportunity to try new things, to be experimental, to work together in ways that I think were unique. And it really matched the culture of innovation at the company. So I think it was sort of a unique environment, but I do think that that can be replicated at lots of different companies, small and large. So, but that sort of unified effort and everybody working together with their eye on the same ball was really, I think, the secret sauce.
But being, at the center of some of the biggest IP debate of the last decade,
Yes.
at least that's what I remember, with
Yes.
regulators, governments, competitors, and clients.
Yeah.
What was it like being on the inside of those conversations?
It's interesting. I think it wasn't really until I took a step back and looked at all of the things that the company had endured since the time that I got there, which was in 2008. I mean, it was really an extraordinary number of opportunities and challenges. And I think because Qualcomm was so committed to innovation and remains such a leader in standards development in particular, and the licensing part of the business is such a critical part of the revenue stream, the company was just always laser focused on what mattered most to it, and was willing to give the teams the ability to go do what they needed to do in any way possible. And I think because we were at the center of so many of those issues, we got to really see how all of the pieces fit together, and the global impact of all of it. And I think it was really an extraordinary experience, and it's almost hard to put into words. But I did go into AI at one point, and I said, just give me a list of all of the existential challenges that Qualcomm faced between 2008 when I joined and right about 2022 when things calmed down a bit. And it started to spit out this very long list, things I hadn't even remembered. And I'm not kidding. Even AI wrote at the end, that's a lot. But okay, even the AI bot realizes that this was an extraordinary period of time. But I think for it was there's no question, it was an absolutely unique opportunity to experience, basically bet the company opportunities and challenges, work with the very, very best people on the planet, lawyers, communications experts, advocacy experts, policy experts, work with the media, talk to investors, work with analysts. I mean, basically all of the stakeholders on both sides. And, I'm so grateful for the experience. I have to sort of pinch myself that I actually had the opportunity to have a front row seat to all of that, because it's just, I don't think when I arrived at the company in 2008, I ever imagined that I would get to do the things that I got to do, and that I got to experience the things I got to experience. So it was really an incredible experience, and one that I continue to be grateful for every day.
That's amazing. And of course, if you were there, it's because you were also great. so there's also something to congratulate yourself.
I had great people around me, and I had people willing to teach me, because to be honest, when I got to Qualcomm, I didn't really know the technology very well. I didn't understand the licensing paradigm and issues like FRAND really at all, or standards development, or any of the really critical institutions that support this whole innovation ecosystem that we all love and work with. And so I had to learn that, and it's complicated, but I had people around me who were willing to take me along on that ride. And I mean, literally, I had, I was embedded with the legal team, so I had a front row seat to the litigation. I also worked with our policy folks who were literally willing to take me up to the hill and let me sit in on meetings, and introduced me to the people that they were working with. And they really treated the communications function as a partner in that advocacy and legal effort. And I think that, that was really unique and important.
Yes. Actually, I do want to talk a little bit more about the communications part, perhaps also because I come from a communications background, and I know how difficult it is to, to explain some notions like
Mm-hmm.
SAPs and FRAND. It can be really, really hard to explain. So,
Mm-hmm.
an IP in general, to be fair. So, how do communications strategy and narrative shape outcomes in those kind of high stake, technically complex disputes that you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about?
I think the most important thing to do first is to step back and identify what's the objective. What is it that we're trying to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
And as a communications expert, if you understand that very clearly from the outset, I think you can then map out your steps pretty easily from that point on. And I think uh, understanding the objective and then figuring out how to simplify it for your audience is really the key, because as you both know, working with in the area of standards development and FRAND and IP litigation and all of licensing and all of the things that go with that, it's a very complicated universe unto its own. There's really nothing else like it. And so I think you have to do two things. Once you understand your objective, you've got to simplify your message and help bring people along in sort of in baby steps. It's a lot to get on the phone with somebody and trying to explain to them what FRAND is and why it's important and how that balance of power was sort of established to create a level playing field for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've seen more than once people's eyes just sort of glaze over, like I have no idea what you're talking about. So I think you just have to be patient and break it down into pieces and help people ultimately see why it matters beyond your company, because it's
Yeah,
really got to matter. It really has to matter to more than just us.
of
I
course.
think for people to feel engaged.
But when I listen to you, I realize that okay, it was great, but not everything was positive, I guess. And sometimes,
No.
sometimes things can go wrong or slightly wrong. But can you just tell us, really, how does it look like when um, the right holders or the right holders get IP communication wrong in a
Mm-hmm.
policy environment? I mean, what's downstream consequences of this?
Well, I think like anything, a good reputation takes years to establish, and it can take seconds to diminish. So I think for the IP holders, the challenge is always to prove that what you're doing is beneficial beyond, again, just your company. And I think that for just take the implementer side, they've got the same challenge. I mean, you've got incredible companies around the world that make incredible products that people love. I think it's a little easier for them to persuade and advocate because people experience their technology through products they love. Whereas, if you're on the IP holder side, it's a bit more of a challenge because you're really advocating for something that people can't see and touch and feel. So I think that I think it's easier for the IP holder side of the table to slip into perceptions that are maybe not positive at times, or we hear the phrase patent troll get used, or that licensing revenue is a tax, or there are different narratives that have taken hold over the years, and so I think the challenge is just to try and figure out how to find the positive in the story that you're telling. Again, make it important beyond just what you're trying to do, and just keep at it. I mean, it's again, it's a complicated area. It just takes time. You've got to just continue to talk to people and keep them engaged and help people understand why what you're doing matters.
Mm-hmm.
But
So, and I think I don't know if I answered your question, Axel, specifically, but I think if you do find yourself in a position where things have gone sideways, you've got to take a step back and be honest with yourself about it, and honest with management, and go, okay, all right, we're in a bad spot at this point. What can we do to turn this around? You have to address it though, and you have to address it immediately, because again, once you sort of slip into that negative territory, it's really hard to dig out.
Yeah.
But there is a broad diversity of topics. It is complex. You need to have diverse skills to really understand the full ecosystem. But what's the most persistent misconception you're trying to correct, in your opinion?
I think when we at Qualcomm, and I think I saw this with other companies too in the IP space, I think one of the most difficult misperceptions to correct is in the litigation context, just to use that as an example. If you're in the midst of a patent litigation fight, I think it's hard to get people to understand that your defense of that IP, or your efforts to protect that IP, matter beyond just your case. I think oftentimes, particularly in the litigation context, or even in the policy context, where you've got different sides arguing over the merits of a piece of legislation, we see in the media, they'll sort of cover the beginning and the end, and maybe a couple of the developments that happen during the case, but it's unusual to see somebody to take the time to really dive into why it matters, or if it matters beyond just that lawsuit. And I think in the case of IP, it does matter beyond just that case or just that piece of legislation, because at the end of the day, innovation benefits everybody, no matter which side you're on. And I think you need to protect those fundamentals of the system for everybody's benefit, and both the implementers, the IP holders, and everybody in between. So again, I just think that's the hard part, is to help people understand why it matters beyond just company A versus company B. And you've got to have a thoughtful listener on the other side, but that's really the biggest challenge. And I think once, even in the policy space in particular, once that message starts to break through, I think we see things change. We saw that in a big legislative fight here in the US, that once people understood that this wasn't just about big companies, this was about small garage, and we call them garage inventors in the US. But that's kind of the Americana Norman Rockwell image of an inventor building a better mousetrap in their garage, and then hopefully turning that into something valuable, either selling it or starting a company. But there's so much value creation at a very, very, very small level, all the way up to big companies like Qualcomm. But the system is the same for everybody. And so I just, as an example, I think in the big legislative fight we had in the US back in around the 2013-14 timeframe, connecting what we were advocating for to the small inventor was absolutely critical. Without that, I'm not sure we would have been successful. And because that was really about just people, and people could really relate to that story, I think, even more so than a big company pursuing licensing revenue.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, well, actually, I'm going to take the opportunity that you have mentioned the inventors, and I'm going to try to change to something more positive. So a distinctive part of your background is actually working directly with these inventors and innovators. So I would like to know, Christie, what have you learned from working directly with inventors that has shaped how you think about IP policy communications?
I think, well, just to start, working with inventors and innovators and engineers is so much fun. I mean, that was really one of the best parts of the job, because they come to work with this sort of purity of ambition and desire and effort, and there are problems they've just got to solve, and they're so eager to solve them, and they're so much fun to work with. So being surrounded by that energy is is a blast.
Mm.
I think, again, creating a story around them and help reminding people that this isn't just some big company that's doing this. These are people in offices working as teams, trying to figure out how to make something good even better. And so getting to work with them and tell their stories. I mean, honestly, this sounds really hokey, but it gives me goosebumps. There's just nothing better. So I really loved that part of my job.
You know, when I listen to you, I just realize how diverse the work of communication is, because clearly you had to tackle so many different topics. But when you try to figure out that the intellectual property sector went through up and downs over the last 20 years, because you have geopolitics getting into the mix.
Yep.
And now we are seeing more or less the same thing with AI. So I tend to believe that what you have applied to IP could be applied to AI and potentially in the future with quantum technologies. But without getting into anything confidential, what did working inside disputes of that scale and the geopolitical complexity teach us today?
I think the bottom line is you have to keep your head on a swivel. You really have to. We often heard people refer to it as playing three-dimensional chess. And I think we always had to be mindful that anything that happened in the US affected things in Europe, which affected things in China, which affected things in Korea, Taiwan, South America, now very much the case in India. So as a global company, you have to be aware of how your actions in each of these different regions may have a bank shot effect somewhere else. So getting to work inside disputes, both on the policy side, and it wasn't always a dispute. Oftentimes we would be advocating for something that we felt was positive. So it wasn't always in the dispute context, but whether it was litigation or policy, we always had to make sure that we checked in with our colleagues in different regions to make sure that whatever we were doing was not going to have an ill effect somewhere else. So that was really exciting and interesting to get to work with colleagues in different regions and hear how IP is perceived in their region. It's perceived differently in different places. How we could tell the story effectively in that region versus somewhere else. Even Europe and the United States are very different in their approaches and in some of the perceptions around these issues. So you have to be really sensitive to your specific audience and be very respectful of the experts in region and really defer to them to help you guide your overall plan. But again, I think that was one of the exciting things. It was really fun to work with colleagues in China and Korea and Taiwan and Japan, and I mean, really all over the planet. So that's a fun thing about the job.
Yeah, I can imagine. And now you are beginning a whole new different phase. You are stepping out on your own. And I would like to know, what problems do you most want to help solve? And yeah, like if there is anything in particular that your consulting practice is going to focus on.
Well, I think the idea that I can help companies or law firms understand how communications can sort of ride shotgun along with the litigation is exciting and interesting. I think for some law firms and companies, it's something they don't even really think about. And it's not a criticism, but when you're in the midst of a dispute, you're so focused on solving that problem, working with your lawyers to figure out your legal strategy, to figure out what it is you're trying to achieve. How do we address it with shareholders? How do we talk about it? I mean, there's so many things to think about, and communications is sometimes an afterthought. So I think if I can help companies or law firms think about those issues early and map out a communication strategy that can help achieve that litigation outcome that they're trying to pursue, that's a lot of fun. So I'm hoping to do as much of that as I can. I'm also remain extremely interested and engaged in geopolitics and geopolitical issues. So there are some things brewing there that I hope to be involved with too. But I think we talked about that global perspective, and that's something I want to continue to take an interest in.
So, Christie, looking back across your whole career, is there a moment, like a case, a policy fight, a conversation, that you are most proud of?
There are so many moments that I'm proud of. I think the project that I'm most proud of and had the most fun working on was our Save the Inventor campaign back in the mid 2014-15 timeframe. We were in the midst of a policy, I wouldn't call it a fight, but I guess it turned into a fight. There was a big policy debate around a piece of legislation that related to patents. And I'll never forget, one of my colleagues on our government affairs team came in my office and he said, "We need an ad campaign." And I had never done that before, but I thought, okay, I'll figure this out. And we worked with the litigation team and the government affairs team and our IP department and others to figure out what's our message. And then we hired a very creative and innovative advertising team here in San Diego. And we put together a campaign that, as I mentioned earlier, really focused on the importance of inventing. And in that process, we brought in small inventors and we encouraged them to lend their voice in the fight. Mm-hmm. And, we of course had no control over what they were going to say. And they showed up on Capitol Hill and they came to our events. And as I mentioned, I think it was really that group of people. We had, at the end of the day, we had more than 30,000 inventors send letters to Congress. And so that was a really rewarding and gratifying experience. And it was just one piece of a broader effort, but I'm really proud of the role that I got to play. It was a huge team effort. We worked with a coalition. We worked with lots of other companies. I mean, I was really just one person in the middle of it. But I think that was really probably the project that I can point to as my most favorite.
But if today, let's say, a chief IP officer or a general counsel or a policy lead is listening to us right now, what is the one thing you most want them to understand about the role of communication and what communication plays in IP disputes and policy outcomes?
I think communications is almost more important in an IP dispute than in other types of litigation. For reasons we talked about earlier, it's not well understood. It's complex. It can be a little bit dry. So I think good storytelling around IP-related litigation is critical. And I think helping, as I mentioned, companies and firms understand how to do that, how to simplify it. I think you mentioned AI earlier, Axel. I think today we can do it in a more cost-effective manner than ever before. So I think, your general counsel and your heads of IP, they understand that litigation is just part of doing business. So again, I think helping them understand that communications can be a partner in that effort, just like you partner with law firms and partner with think tanks and advocacy groups and others. Communications, in my view, should really ride along in that effort as a partner. So I think that's what I would share.
Yeah, completely agree. So I have one final question for you, Christie. And I have been asking this question only in the last couple of episodes. So you might know what's coming. But basically, to close, I would like to know, if you weren't working in IP and policy at all, or communications, like none of it, what do you think you would be doing instead?
It's such a good question, and I've thought about this. I think I might do something and maybe this sounds a little bit frivolous, but I might do something in interior design. I love design.
Nice.
I think that's partly why the advertising campaign that we did back in the day was such a fun project, because it really I got to meld my creative side of my brain and the intellectual side. So I think I would do something in interior design, but I think the reason I won't do it is because I would want people to do what I like. I'm not sure that I don't know that I would love it if I had to design something that I didn't really love. But you probably figure it out, because like in any job, you have to be a good listener, and ultimately it's about what your client needs and not what you need. So
exactly, you would end up figuring it out. Maybe
exactly. I wouldn't have very many clients.
Or maybe you would just be very good at convincing clients that what they actually want is exactly what you want.
Exactly. I think my best path is to continue down the professional path I'm on and just spend time rearranging furniture in my own house. So.
And your new office now as well. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much, Christie, for spending this time with us. It's been amazing talking with you, and so easy.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you both.
Thanks. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to IP Stories by 4IP Counsel. Visit our website on 4ipcounsel.eu to find out more and check out the links mentioned during this episode. If you liked it, remember to share and subscribe.